Hello, so Miss Bromley has asked me to make this video for anybody interested in applying for Oxbridge, so that's either Cambridge or Oxford for either history, or even if you'd sell in a different subject. I would hope this would still be somewhat relevant. So I'll just go through just in a few minutes, just some brief things that I learned through the process, some things that you might want to know. So firstly, I would say don't worry if you don't know what you want to study. So when I started thinking about all university stuff last January, it would have been something like that, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do either history on its own, or if I wanted to do history like combined with English or something, or I was thinking about doing law as well. So I think even if you're not sure what subjects you want to do, I wouldn't let that kind of deter you from thinking about Oxford or Cambridge. I might say Oxford more often than not because that's what I applied for, but it still mostly applies to Cambridge. But it doesn't really matter, like you can still take part in the process of Oxford or Cambridge, even if you don't know what subject you want to do now. So this kind of goes on to the next point. So I actually think that if you don't know what subject you want to do, trying for an Oxford or Cambridge application is actually quite beneficial in decide what you're going to do, because of the kind of process that, I'm assuming you're doing this with Miss Fraser, or if she's not started, she'll start it. She's kind of like the Oxbridge coordinator for Blue Coat. But the process of starting an Oxford application is about doing research, so just getting to know your subject more and getting to find your kind of specific interests within it. So I think it's a good idea even if you're not sure, because the thing about this is that you can like opt out at any time. So from kind of like now till September, when you start actually writing your personal statement properly, it's all just about kind of research and stuff like that. So if you decide at some point you don't want to apply for Oxford or Cambridge, the research you've done is still useful just for your own knowledge and knowing that you're doing, like, applying for the right course, and also just for doing a normal application for different universities. So yes, even if you're not sure if you want to apply for Oxford or Cambridge, because I wasn't sure, it took me a while to decide it was actually what I wanted. And then if you're not sure what subject you want to do, like I wasn't either, I don't think either of them should stop you at this point kind of thinking about it, because you're not really going to lose anything by considering it. And if you say you don't want to do it, then it's really easy just to kind of say, this isn't for me, I'm just going to do a normal application, and you've really not lost anything. So the first step in starting your research, so kind of like at this time now to start doing this, is just to explore your subject, or your subjects if you're not decided yet, just to try and find out the kind of specific things that interest you. So again, if Miss Fraser started doing Oxbridge sessions, she will have a list of loads of stuff you can do. So I've got a post-it note of things that I'm saying for reference. So for me, the first thing that I did was started to listen to podcasts, because that just felt like the easiest thing for me, because it's just quite simple just to put them on and have a listen, and you can kind of like flick through different things so you can try and like find your interest. So for me, In Our Time podcasts were probably my favourite, because they're just an hour long, and they have kind of like different researchers from different universities talking, and then each episode is on something entirely different. And also they have In Our Time history, but they have like culture and English and stuff like that, so you can look at different subjects as well. Other podcasts that I liked for history was Witness History, because they're only like 10 minutes long, and they're like mostly interviews with people, so that's more for modern history, but it is really interesting. A series called Revolutions that I talked about my actual personal statement for the Russian Revolution, but they had loads of other like different types of stuff like that. If you're interested, they were more like heavy. They were like an hour long an episode, but the seasons were like 40 episodes plus. But you can check it out; it's something to look at. There's one called Presidential, which goes through like president an episode. Again, like an hour long, which is quite good if you're interested in stuff like that. Like if you like Hamilton and stuff like that. Also for law, because I was looking at law, there was one called the Media Law podcast that I quite liked. But it's really easy to find a podcast that you're interested in, because if you've got like the app, like the little like purple thing that says podcast, so you can use Spotify. If you just literally search like history or like something more specific, like I don't know, medieval history, then you'll usually find quite a extensive list of podcasts and episodes. So I would definitely recommend that. And then again, I think Miss Fraser will go through this, but things that I used or heard people use were online courses. So you can go on things like OpenLearn, like just in Google, and it gives you these like kind of like free mini courses in specific subjects and specific subject areas. I never did this properly. I would start them and then kind of like give up halfway through, but I know some people actually use them well, and they got my posting up fell again. and then you get kind of like certificates at the end and stuff like that. Like, it doesn't really have any value outside of this, but it is quite useful just to try and specialise into a specific area of history that you might be interested in. So yeah, I would recommend that. I put it over again. I just can't just stick there. Books is quite an obvious one, but books are really helpful. I've got some things to show you. So I started doing the French Revolution for my research. I mean, I switched at the end. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I read the two Stephen Clark ones. So again, this is obviously quite specific to me, but yeah, that's a good idea. And then I did the same thing when I switched to the Russian Revolution. So I mean, it looks quite intimidating, but like, that's only because I switched subjects. And mind you, you've got now until like September, so you've got quite a lot of time really to start looking at things. Another thing that I've done is the BBC. I've got this to show as well. The BBC magazine subscription. These are just two examples. They're actually on my shelf. Can you see them? No, you won't be able to see them. That's just two examples. That was this month's. So it's just a £5 a month. You can like get the subscription, so they just come to your door every month. Alternatively, I'm sure the school has some of these, but obviously in a lockdown that's not very easy. But if you can, when we go back, or if you go back after this lockdown, then I'm assuming Mr. Potter will have some in the library. Alternatively, they might just have some in the history department and like raid the history at some point. I'm not going to lie, I've got one of the magazines I've got down there, I just kind of nicked from the classroom. So you can be resourceful with it. Essay contest is another one. It's more of a time consuming and more, dare I say, boring one. But I think just to do at least one essay contest is a good idea. So I did one. It was the John Locke Institute or something like that, and it was on incarceration rates in the USA. So it was kind of like 1950s to kind of like 1980s, 1990s, and just about kind of like how crime law changed and how that. But I did it at like a civil rights angle, and about how it was kind of like the purpose was to like disrupt African American communities at the time of civil rights. But there's loads of essay contests you can do. Some ask you more specific things like that, but some will just ask like really broad things like, what is history? So that's probably quite a good idea. I mean, you don't have to like win or anything. Like, I didn't win any of mine, but it was still something that I put on my application, and it ended up being literally the only thing that I got asked about in my interview. That was my personal statement. I spent like half my time talking about that because he seemed interested in it. So that is probably quite a good one to do. And I'd also look to see if you can find anything like specific to do. Oh my god. Anything specific you can do, anything like specific that you can talk about on your personal statement. So what I did work with the People's History Museum, you know, like the one in Manchester. There's kind of like modern democracy and stuff like that. So I just literally emailed them because I was getting really desperate because it was in a lockdown. I just emailed them and was like, hi, do you want some help with stuff? And so I did like a set of like 5 Zooms with them because they were looking at kind of, it was quite convenient actually, the timing, because they were looking at how they can kind of like attract kind of like our demographic, so like 16 to 18 year olds into the museum. So I did some Zooms with them over that. I just kind of like did bits of research and stuff. I just kind of discussed how I thought they could like best attract our age group, and then that ended up being my actual personal statement. So if you can just kind of like email museums and be like really pestery, because obviously it's so limited what you can do. So that's gonna being in a lockdown is really going to limit what you can do. But I mean, I was in a lockdown. I was in the first lockdown when I was doing my Oxbridge stuff. So there is ways. So just email museums and be really pestery. I tried to get work experience at the BBC and failed, but you can try and do that. You could try and email specific historians, maybe. I mean, it might be a bit of a stretch. I think there's definitely ways you can do it. I'll probably start with museums first. Or if you need to kind of like interview, even if you just kind of like email like lecturers, maybe if you can kind of like look online, I'm sure they could potentially do stuff with you. I just think anything that you can get that's a bit more specific, if you just get kind of like one thing, that'd be quite a nice idea. So once you're doing your research, I think it's a good idea to follow some sort of process with it. Because I mean, you don't have to worry about this now, but when you actually write your personal statement, you kind of do it where you talk about like one thing you've researched, and then you take a specific part and say kind of like, this specifically interested me, so I developed it further by researching this, and this taught me this about history. This made me more of an enthusiastic learner. It made me want to whatever. So I think in your research, if you can do it on those kind of like methodical lines, it might help your case a bit later. So like, I think one example is in like these BBC magazines. You can get different brands of this, and I think you can get like a world history one as well. It's just the British one. But at the end of each article, they kind of say, I can't find an example, but they usually say kind of like, if you're interested in this article and here's further reading, they give you like further books to read or further magazine articles, or they give you like a documentary. So if you can get any kind of magazines like that and look at the kind of further reading, I think that could probably be quite a good way to structure your personal statement, because you'd be kind of like, well, like, actually make it legit. So like actually like read an article, and if you read it you think, oh, I actually genuinely am interested in this, and you can take it further, and then when you come to write a personal statement you can say, I read an article and blah blah blah, and this specifically interested me, so I followed it up by doing this blah blah blah, and that's actually what you're going to do in your personal statement. So that's probably quite a useful option. And I think something to bear in mind is don't be worried about kind of like researching something now and then kind of like change your direction, because literally like 95% of what you'll research now, what you're going to be doing now, you won't actually talk about in your real personal statement because it's like so long away. And obviously you at the moment, you still just kind of think about what you're going to do, what you're going to specialise in and stuff like that. So like I said, for me, I ended up doing just random stuff for the first few months. And then at the start of lockdown, I started doing the French Revolution. And I started reading these books, and then I ended up doing this for coursework instead, so I couldn't do this for my personal statement anymore. So then I switched and started doing this stuff. And then, so I don't think I wrote about anything that I did like before April maybe. So I think at this point, I mean, if you can do something now that you actually want to write about and you actually do, then that's fine. But it's just kind of like the time to explore a bit, so don't really worry if you kind of do research on something for a few weeks and think, oh, I don't like this, or oh, I don't think I can write about this. Because like, it's fine. I mean, I'll still log it, maybe just kind of like writing your notes app on your phone what you've done in case you do actually want to use it later on. But it's fine just to kind of like explore and research stuff and then kind of not use it in the end. So I wouldn't be worried about that. And also, just anything that you're researching or anything that you think you might actually use in the end, just bear in mind it is something that you feel comfortable talking about, because if you put it on your personal statement, there's a chance that they ask you about it in your interview, and so you want to know that you'll be able to kind of like relatively coherently talk about it. And obviously you've got like under a year, so you've definitely got more than enough time to get comfortable with it. But just so you're aware of that. So like, I mean, for mine, they only asked me, like I said, they literally asked me for like 15 minutes about the essay contest, and started kind of like asking questions from that. But they could have asked me about anything. So if I would have not read the books that I'd written about, or like only like read them half-heartedly and then like rocked in, and they would have asked me stuff about that specifically, you might have been a little bit screwed. So I'll just bear that in mind. Have fun with it. I think that's an important one. I mean, it sounds quite obvious, but if you see this as a chore, I don't think you're really going to get much out of it. And I think that's quite a good way to decide what you want to do as well, because when I was doing this and I was doing like the law side of stuff and trying to research that, just personally I was a bit like, oh, I don't like this, it's boring. So I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to want to do a degree in it, am I? But then when I was doing the history stuff, and when I was kind of doing the specific stuff I was interested in, when I kind of like found what I liked, I really enjoyed it. So I kind of thought, well, yeah, that's actually what I want to do. And also, just so you know the kind of overall process, I don't really know what it is for Cambridge, so sorry about that, but for Oxford, so you do your personal statement, and mind you, the Oxbridge personal statement, and Miss Fraser's already gone through this, and I'm sorry for repeating her, but you do your personal statement, which is an Oxbridge specific one, so it asks you pretty much 90% just about your subjects and what you've researched. That's what's called super curricular as opposed to extracurricular, which is what you talk about in a normal personal statement. So like, I don't know if you do dancing or whatever, but then for Oxbridge you want to know about your super curricular, so like the beyond your curricular in the subjects you want to study, so like beyond the history curriculum, beyond what you do in class. So yeah, so if anybody's talking to you and they're like, oh no, but you don't talk about your subject that much, you do for Oxbridge. They're wrong for Oxbridge. And then you will have to submit an essay in like September, but it's like one that you do in class. It's like one of your subject essays, so you don't need to worry about that until September. And then you apply. I can't remember, the deadline's in like late September, early November. You have to do an early deadline for Oxbridge. And then if you get an email for interview, then you do that in kind of like December time. But obviously it was different for me because it was online, and I'm assuming yours will be actually in person, which means you actually get to go to Oxford, which is fun. I didn't really get to do that. It's quite sad. So yeah, I think for now though, the only thing you need to focus on is doing your research to get ready for your personal statement. But you don't even have to start writing your personal statement yet, Because I've been speaking for so long. How does that happen? My last thing I'm going to say is make sure you get involved in anything that Miss Fraser does and kind of like listen to her advice, because she's like really good at this, and she went to Cambridge and she's been doing this at Blue Coat for a while, so she's probably your best source of advice when it comes to Oxbridge related stuff. And also subscribe to Oxcentric, I'll put it there. This is my friend Sam, who goes to Oxford at the moment, and he's got a YouTube channel all dedicated to Oxford related stuff, and he's got loads of stuff about how to write a personal statement and stuff like that, so that's also a really useful tool. And then if you've got any more questions for me, then you can email me, I guess. I'll put it there if I remember. If I don't, sorry. Leave a comment below, probably. Yeah, that's probably it. Thanks. Bye.